Hi, and good evening, everybody. I'd like to thank the Indie Design team for putting this whole event together so beautifully. I have a special connect to Pune. I have an umbilical cord connection because I was born here. I haven't been back many times after, but yes, there is a special connect, so it's lovely to be here today. I'm going to take you through a little wider picture, in the sense a little bit about documentary film production, because that's the area that I'm in. I've been in a mix of documentary film and sort of films for the social sector, which also broadly come under the same umbrella. But I'm taking you through my journey as well as the broader journey. And I'd like to start by telling you that I was in NID 1979 to 1984, so really way back, as Shambhavi sort of gently pointed out that she wasn't even born then, and I'm sure a lot of you were not even born at that point of time. But yeah, I was privileged to be at NID during that period of time, and I did visual communication, which gave me a very, very broad idea, like Indrajit said, across platforms and across visual medium. I didn't go there to be a filmmaker. I went there to do visual communication, and I really enjoyed every aspect of visual communication, and I feel that I'm able to marry it all into my films now. Every aspect that one learned there, whether it was, Bhandari's, who was one of our faculty members, whether it was, from the unknown to the known and the known to the unknown. So all the visual language that you learned in visual communication applied in the films that I've done across the years. And pretty much like Indrajit, I've done a lot of motion design, etc., although I'm not carrying any of that with me. I've done a lot of promos. So I'm just going to take you through a little bit of my journey, and like I said, segue into the larger picture as well in doing so. My own journey into filmmaking at NID started with a workshop called Are You Listening?, which was done by a lady who came in from New York called Martha Stewart. And the workshop, interestingly, was for SEVA, which is a self-employed women's association. That's Ila Ben there. And interestingly, it was to teach video filmmaking to people who had who were completely illiterate. So these were members of SEVA who were vegetable vendors, beedi makers, block printers, people like that, who had no formal background, who were not even literate. And interestingly, again, a lot of our visual communication, the importance of visual communication came into play in this workshop. And I realized the value of visual communication because they taught filmmaking to these people through color coding, that, okay, the stop button is red in color, it's square, it is, the play button is a triangle. So it was very interesting that these shapes, these colors, all the graphic design that one was learning about was coming into play over here. And again, it was, it was an eye-opener for me because we were learning, design in this fancy institute, and here were people who had no literacy level at all, and they were learning how to wield a camera. And equipment that at that time, I'm talking about 40 plus years ago, was not easy. It was sort of unwieldy. It was big equipment. It was not so easy to operate as our cameras and cell phones today, which are so sort of intuitive and easy to operate. So they all learned filmmaking. Another aspect of filmmaking we learned, again, very interestingly over there, was in-camera editing, because again, we didn't have the luxury of editing studios over there. They had just come with a camera. So they taught us to do in-camera editing. So you had to plan your film on paper. You had to plan shot by shot. This is what I will shoot. This is what my next shot will be. This is what my third shot will be. So you had to plan it really well beforehand so that you could go out and shoot it like that. So that really was my introduction to filmmaking. Filmmaking at NID had still not come in a proper way. It was just part of the visual communication course. It was almost film appreciation and not filmmaking at the time that I was there. And in fact, again, I had the privilege of opening all the equipment. The video equipment actually came into NID the year after I did this workshop, and I had the privilege of, Mr. I.S. Mathur and Mr. Saxena again, who were faculty members at that time. We opened up the cartons. We learned everything from the manuals. So it was a very exciting time. The technology, they themselves didn't know the technology then, the video technology, so to say. This is just another visual from the workshop. Again, these are women who were, from the communities who were out there learning how to make films. So these were really, my learnings from that workshop, and these are learnings that sort of, I carried forward into my career for many years. The fact that, video actually is a very, very powerful tool, that it has no literacy barriers is something that I learned very strongly over there. Anyone can tell a story, and that, the story in itself, the sharing of a story, the telling of a story can be really impactful. And of course, video as a tool to take that story out was a very powerful and impactful sort of tool, is something that one learned. It can, I'm not going to read out all of that, but I'm sure you can, see that. But where was the platform to showcase videos like this was the question. So when I came out of NID, I came out with this with the dream of making social impact films and, doing films that will have impact on larger audiences and all. But there really was no platform at that point of time where I could come out and do films like that. So I'm just going back a little bit into, documentary filmmaking itself. Started really far back, and, they were called actuality films. Interestingly, the first sort of film, the first documented knowledge of a documentary film in India was in 1888. The first documentary was made as far back as that. And originally, documentary films used to be just snippets about, reality things. So a train coming into the station, a ship coming into the port. They were just things that people documented to showcase to a larger audiences, because even those were novelty things, So it was called actuality films. They became documentary films only, as late as 1926. In India, why I'm coming into this context is because when I came out of NID, the only platform for documentary films really was Films Division. Films Division was a government organization, was set up post-independence, and was primarily meant for, showing development work of the government. It was mostly sort of publicity of government programs. They were basically newsreels that showcased dignitary visits, or, Bhakra Nangal is being made, so development projects that the government was undertaking. That's really what it was set up for. But having said that, they had also commissioned the likes of Satyajit Ray and Hussain to do documentary films, and those films are also available in their archives even now. Interestingly, way back in 1968, there was an Indian documentary film that was nominated for the Oscars. But again, because documentary was so, it was just not something that was at all in the, in the forefront. I don't think anybody even knows. Very few people would know that there was an Oscar nomination as far back as 1968. In fact, there was one in 1978 as well. There was an Indian documentary film that was nominated for the Oscars. But it's only now in 2022 that when, a film has got nominated, that people have come to know about it, because it's a documentary film, because documentary films have come into the forefront now, So I sort of brought all this up because this was the atmosphere that I came out from NID into, and I didn't know where to go if I wanted to make social impact films. So anyway, I didn't get disheartened, and to start with, I just did a lot of corporate videos and stuff like that, which were bread and butter projects, which I still used to, I think, hone my skills to sort of, learn the various aspects of filmmaking. And alongside, I started gravitating towards social impact films, which I started doing through NGOs. I started getting in touch with NGOs, and in turn, they got in touch with me, and then even organizations like UNICEF. And also, over a period of time, I started doing a lot of social impact films for organizations like that. So all of them were for NGOs, so they were all commissioned films. They were relatively small audiences, and yet it was a start that I'd made, and I'd started sort of making films of the kind that I wanted to make. So I'm just going to play one of the films which I did, I think, almost 8-10 years ago. But all the same, it's still very relevant. It's about a 4-minute film, which was done for an organization called Room to Read that does education for young girls.
मेरा नाम रोशन है, रोशन आरा।
रोशन हमारे लेवल 1 से ही हम लोगों के साथ पढ़ने आई है। बहुत एक नटखट चुलबुली लड़की।
मेरी फैमिली में हम 5 बहनें हैं। एक की शादी हो गई है, 4 अभी पढ़ रही हैं और मैं भी कॉलेज कर रही हूँ। पापा रिक्शा चलाते हैं और मम्मी हाउसवाइफ है। पापा जुआ खेलते तो कम पैसे दे पाते हैं घर पे, तो उस वजह से सही से घर चल नहीं पाता। मीन्स बहुत ज़्यादा प्रॉब्लम्स रहती, कभी राशन नहीं होता घर पे, कभी कुछ नहीं होता, तो दोपहर में खाना भी नहीं बन पाता। कभी कभी हमारे घर में ऐसा होता है।
फैमिली में पेरेंटल सपोर्ट नहीं है, माँ बाप उनके आपस के झगड़े इतने रहे, उन्होंने कभी बच्चों पे ध्यान ही नहीं दिया।
रूम ट्रेड मैंने जब से ज्वाइन करा, वहाँ पे लाइफ स्किल्स के सेशंस वगैरह होते थे, तो उसमें हमें बताया जाता था कि मतलब क्या करना है, कैसे करना है। तो मतलब फैमिली से बातें करना और फिर अपनी पढ़ाई के लिए बोलना। तो मतलब स्कूल वाले ने बहुत ज़्यादा हेल्प करी है मेरे, मतलब फैमिली को समझाते थे कि बेटी को पढ़ाओ, ये वो।
फिर एक स्टेज ऐसी आई जहाँ पर शायद रोशन की शरारत की वजह से उन्होंने डिसाइड कर दिया कि रोशन की शादी कर दो 10th से पहले ही।
रोशन दीदी रिश्ता लगा रहे, क्यों लगा रहे हो अम्मी, मुझे पढ़ना है। मुझे नहीं, क्यों पढ़ेगी भाई, नहीं पढ़ेगी तू, क्यों पढ़ेगी, चल तेरी शादी कर रहे हैं हम। सबके सब राजी हो गए शादी, मतलब मेरी तो कोई पूछो ना भाई मुझे क्या करना है। नहीं, किसी को कुछ नहीं पड़ी हुई, बस रिश्ता वाले घर आ गए, रिश्ता पक्का हो गया, रोशन की शादी करवा दो।
रोशन ने अपनी प्रॉब्लम यहाँ शेयर करी, पता करा गया कि किस तरह से क्या माहौल चल रहा है। सभी, तकरीबन सभी लोग फैमिली में, नानी मामू सब चाहते थे कि रोशन की शादी कर दी जाए।
तो फिर मैम से सारी बताया, फिर मैम ने सारी बहुत समझाया हमें कि रोशन ऐसे करना है बात। तो मैं फिर घर गई, मैंने अम्मी से कहा अम्मी मुझे पढ़ना है, मैंने आपको बताया ना मुझे कॉलेज भी करना है। क्या करेगी कॉलेज करके रोशन, क्या करेगी तू, आखिर कुछ चूल्हे ही तो करना है तुझे और कुछ नहीं करना, घर का ही काम करना है। मैंने कहा अम्मी ऐसा थोड़ी ना होता है यार, अगर कुछ प्रॉब्लम आ गई लाइफ में फ्यूचर में समझो, तो फिर मैं क्या करूंगी, मेरा हस्बैंड कुछ कर नहीं रहा, क्या करूंगी मैं, पढ़ी लिखूंगी तभी तो अच्छी जॉब करूंगी ना, अच्छी सैलरी चलाऊंगी तभी अपने घर चलाऊंगी, अपने बच्चों को अपने बच्चों को घर पे ट्यूशन दूंगी, मैं घर पढ़ूंगी। तो तब समझाया कि मुझे करना ही नहीं है, अभी नहीं करना। मैं इतना फोर्स करने के बाद तब जाके अम्मी मानी, तब जाके रिश्ता टूटा।
चेंज की जहाँ बात होती है वहाँ पे हम बच्चों में तो चेंज ला पा रहे हैं, और हम हमेशा बच्चों को समझाते हैं कि वो अपनी फैमिली में चेंज लाएंगे, लेकिन वो भी ग्रेजुअली।
कुछ मूवमेंट पे ना ऐसा लगता है बस सब खत्म, अब कुछ नहीं होता। क्योंकि जो मूवमेंट आता ना मैंने शादी की, ऐसा लग रहा था कि बस रोशनी तो बस अब तो बैठ जा, अब तो कुछ भी नहीं कर सकती। फिर एक होता है ना कुछ उजाला मिलता है, रोशनी मिलती है कहीं से कि हाँ भाई कोई है मेरी मदद कर सकता है, कि रोशनी है तो जा सकती है उस रास्ते से। तो उस रास्ते पे जाओ, अपनी बात का, और हमेशा कभी हार नहीं माननी चाहिए जिंदगी से।
Yeah, thank you. So again, these were just, storytelling for impact. Some of my learnings again that, yes, NGO films don't come with large budgets, but just because they don't come with large budgets doesn't mean you can't make a good film, doesn't mean that you can't create impact. Yes, you can't make good money out of it, but you can still make a good film, you can still create impact, and that's really, what I set out with. So I continued doing other films alongside so that the bread and butter could come in, and I did more and more of these films. I'm playing after this a film that we've done for UNICEF quite recently. This was not really a social impact film in that sense. These were 6 one-minute films that we did for them. There was a Mental Health Awareness Week that was happening in June this year, and so there was a series of films that went online. So I'm just playing one of the films that on identity.
ये बात।
अच्छा डैड,
हाँ
12th की फेयरवेल अगले संडे है।
अरे वंडरफुल।
आपको पता है वो कुणाल, मेरा क्लासमेट,
हाँ
वो आजकल बहुत स्ट्रेस्ड आउट है, किसी से बात नहीं करता है, बहुत बहुत अकेला सा हो गया है।
प्रॉब्लम क्या है?
He's different. वो कह रहा था कि फेयरवेल में कुछ अलग सा पहनना चाहता है, कुछ रंग बिरंगा सा विद एक्सेसरीज।
डिफरेंट मतलब साड़ी पहनेगा क्या?
उसमें क्या प्रॉब्लम है?
सीरियसली मुझे लगा तू मजाक कर रहा था यार। उसके पेरेंट्स कंजर्वेटिव हैं, घर भर से निकाल दिया।
घर से क्यों निकालेंगे? उसकी चॉइस है ना डैड। अपने भाई और मुझे ये तो सिखाया है, उसकी आइडेंटिटी है, उसकी पहचान है, तो उसे अपनाने की भी तो आजादी होनी चाहिए ना। लेकिन अपने पेरेंट्स से शेयर करने की उसकी हिम्मत नहीं हो रही। सोच सोच के परेशान हो रहा है।
ऐसे बात तो उसे करनी चाहिए अपने पेरेंट्स से, लेकिन मुझे पता नहीं कि ऐसी चीज उसके पेरेंट्स एक्सेप्ट कर पाएंगे या नहीं।
और डैड, मेरे पेरेंट्स, क्या आप लोग एक्सेप्ट कर पाओगे?
So it was only in the early 2000s that, documentary filmmaking per se went through a considerable transformation. Since we are talking about transformation, I came from really far back. So it really had nothing to do with the pandemic per se. It was in the early 2000s with films like this that documentary filmmaking came into the forefront, and suddenly there was, people began to notice that there is another genre of filmmaking other than the mainstream. Of course, in India, what I think I overlooked talking about was that even with films division, there was an independent film movement that had been brewing alongside. So you had a number of filmmakers who were doing a lot of political films, who were doing that kind of, filmmaking, but there was a very narrow and limited audience for that. Those films were limited to the film festival circuit. They were limited to very, very sort of narrow niche audiences. So even though, the independent film movement was happening, documentary film per se was not really much of a movement in India. Till all of this happened, these kind of films came into the foreground, and world over, people started noticing that there is another genre that one can speak through. And suddenly it wasn't just what the story was saying, but also how it was. So, the process of filmmaking itself started coming into, the storytelling, how the film was being shot, how the film had been sort of created. All of that started coming into play at that point of time. India was still slow to the uptake. Again, there were still not that many platforms till there was Netflix. It was, and I'm saying Netflix because, yes, the other OTT platforms followed, but it was really Netflix that changed, how documentary films were perceived, because they brought it into the mainstream. They brought shows into the mainstream, shows, which were sort of based on true crime, which were based on a whole lot of reality, but were documentary all the same, And so, and they became almost a source of entertainment because they were so gripping, they were beautifully made, the production values were fantastic. They started giving budgets for documentaries, good budgets for documentaries, so production values went up considerably. So there was a considerable transformation in the sort of scenario, so to say. And I would say that all the other platforms follow suit. So, of course, your Amazon and all of them, including channels like NGC, National Geographic, and Discovery, who were earlier also, carrying films, but they were carrying mostly documentaries done by sort of filmmakers outside of India. There was very little work being commissioned out of India itself. Although I have to say, I've been working for Discovery almost for 12 to 15 years. 15 years we've been doing films for them, but there was very limited films that were being commissioned by Discovery and platforms like that within India. So Netflix changed that scenario, and of course, the storytelling has remained at the core of any filmmaking, whether it's short films, whether it's long films, whether it's fiction, whether it's non-fiction. It's the storytelling that's important. And I think more and more people started realizing that even in non-fiction content, the storytelling could be really interesting. It could be gripping. And you connect to it that much more simply because it's a true story. It's a true story. It's non-fiction, so it's a true story. You connect to it extremely well because of that. So that was one of the other reasons why non-fiction sort of became so popular. Today, non-fiction is leading the way even in new technologies. So, even Indrajit talked about it. There's a lot of new technologies being used in non-fiction. One is sort of breaking the space with a lot of things. Like I said, budgets have also become that much better, so one can experiment with a lot of. We just did a series for Discovery called The Legends of the Ramayana with Amish, and we used something called FPV drones, which are actually used for gaming, but we used it for filmmaking because they're very high-speed drones, but they give you very dynamic shots. So we were shooting in places like Sri Lanka, and we used the FPV, and it gave us really dramatic shots. So, again, it enhances the storytelling, it brings excitement into it, and that is the reason why one uses new technologies. But it's important, again, to use the technology where it fits in and not just for the sake of using the new technology. It needs to lend to the story that one is talking about. Up next, I'm going to sort of show you a promo for a 1-hour special that we did for Discovery. So like I said, over the years, I along with my sort of short films, that the social impact films, I've been doing a lot of documentary films, and this is the other avatar, so to say, where I do longer format films for channels like History Channel and Discovery, etc. This particular promo that I'm going to show you was for a 1-hour special, which was on a moon mission. And again, my work, people ask me what I specialize in. I don't specialize in any genre. I specialize in storytelling and telling a story well. So I've done, like I said, right from the Ramayana. This is the moon mission. So one has done very, very varied subjects across the years. And I think one is able to, I think one has the ability to tell the story, whatever the story might be, to be able to research it, to be able to grasp, comprehend what the story that needs to be told. And at the end of it, it's the human story that really needs to be told in any sort of thing. So this particular thing, there was a sort of a global prize called the Google Lunar X Prize, which was sponsored by Google. The prize money was $20 million US, and the task was to land a rover on the moon. And any team from across the world could apply for this. It could be a student team, it could be a novice team, it could be a professional team. Anybody from across the world could land a rover on the moon. It couldn't be government funded, it had to be individually funded. But the prize money was 20 million US dollars. And the whole idea was to bring, since space is something that is sort of has been the legacy of governments, typically, whether it's your NASA, whether it's ISRO, ESA, all of them, they're government agencies that run space programs. The idea was to bring space into the private sector. So, this contest was launched, and there was one Indian team that entered it on the last day of the contest. They were a complete novice team. They were novice in the sense that they were two IIT sort of graduates out of there, but they had no space sort of background. They just jumped into it. It was a 10-year award, sort of the period for the development. They came to us to create a film about something altogether different. They wanted to do something, they wanted to have a contest for students, etc. They came to us for that, and we said, but what are you doing? And they said, we are sending a rover to the moon. Almost apologetically, they said to us, we are developing a rover that we are sending to the moon. And we fell over backwards, and we said, can we sort of do a story on you? And they said, look, there's nothing in place, but you want to do a story on us? You do a story on us. So we followed them over 4 years. We shot bits and pieces of, their story, literally from a garage in Noida. They had like a huge setup in Bangalore with almost 100 people, with people from ISRO who they had employed. And they were the front runners for the contest, but then there was a lot of red tapeism within the country. They needed clearances from the government. Sadly, the contest had to be called off because, they were the only ones and they couldn't make it because of that. So anyway, this is just the backstory, but
it's daunting to try and comprehend or grapple with the scope of what is being asked to do.
The audacity was that we are attempting as an Indian team something massive.
We were all, targeting to land on the moon.
There is no 101 book on how do you go to the moon, and you need to discover what you need to do on your own.
People just did not believe that a ragtag team coming out of India can do it.
ये प्लान पूरा टीम इंडस का नहीं है, इसमें पूरी एक कंट्री है, इसमें इंडियन पूरी पब्लिक है.
We will go land on the moon. There's a strong belief that we will make this happen.
So like I said, sadly, they had to withdraw from the contest at the last moment, and the contest was closed down. But yeah, it was a great project. This is another promo for another film that we did on climate change for Discovery. It's called, the film was called India 2050, and basically took a very alarmist view of climate change. This was done, I think, a good 3-4 years ago. It was pre-pandemic. It took a very alarmist approach, basically to make people sit up and sort of say that, okay, climate change is at your doorstep, wake up to it. So it's, again, it was a 1-hour special. This is a promo for it.
In August 2019, just in 12 days, India has got 1,000 extreme and heavy rainfall events.
A government agency recently said that Delhi is going to run out of water within the next 18 months. Can you imagine the catastrophe of that? Dozen Indian cities are facing this absolutely existential crisis of water.
The concentrations of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere are the highest ever in the last 800,000 years.
In fact, it would put a big question mark on the survivability of the human civilization.
The impact of the vehicular pollution means that children are actually not making brain cells, and that is also accounting for the increased amount of autism and attention deficit.
in about a matter of seconds, water started to enter the house from the roads, bathrooms, kitchen.
ਹਰ ਰੋਜ਼ 3 ਸੁਸਾਈਡ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਨੇ। ਅੱਜ ਕਿਸਾਨ ਭੁੱਖਾ ਮਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਤੇ ਫਿਰ ਪੂਰਾ ਹਿੰਦੁਸਤਾਨ ਭੁੱਖਾ ਮਰੇਗਾ।
People like us are protected. We believe, and it's our arrogance which has created the problem, because we believe nothing can affect us.
It is happening. It is here and now. It is affecting us. We are simply not connecting the dots.
We will have less water, we will have less food, our economy will shrink. Climate change could be the biggest reason for conflict in the future.
It will be a major civil strife that nations cannot handle.
We don't have time anymore.
Yeah. So I think what is heartening is that, you know, over the years, now these films are now, of course, you know, apart from Netflix, there's also been YouTube. So a lot of these films are available on these platforms. And what is heartening is that the numbers, the sort of the viewers on these are increased, you know, considerably increased over a period of time, which means that there is a sort of scope for documentary filmmaking, and there is space for documentary filmmaking. And, you know, people are now sort of willing to watch something that is beyond pure entertainment. I don't know, do we have time for another video, or we don't? Do we? Okay. So I'm going to play one last thing which I just kept as a backup, which is a completely different project. This was YouTube themselves. YouTube as a platform approached us, and they had a global sort of series going, which was called Creator Spotlights, where they were spotlighting their creators from across the world. And typically they were picking up celebrities across the world, because they were picking up people with the maximum subscribers. So, you know, 3 million, 4 million, 10 million subscribers, they were picking up, and they were typically celebrities, you know, globally. In India, they chose to go to the grassroots. They said, we want to pick up people with large sort of subscriber bases, but we want to go to the grassroots and not go to celebrities, because celebrities in any case have the viewership, so why should we be spotlighting them? So they picked out 8 people really from the grassroots. So there's one farmer, there is you know, one person in South India who speaks only Malayalam, he knows no English or Hindi, who does do-it-yourself science videos for children. There is one guy who is from the village and who uses all the village folk to create social awareness videos. So whether it's about alcoholism or, you know, whatever the prevalent sort of problems are in the villages, he creates videos out of those. So these are people who in themselves have subscribers who are, you know, upwards of 2.5 million. And something that I learned also in the bargain is that YouTube pays them. The moment you cross 1 million subscribers, YouTube starts paying you. And as you keep going up, YouTube starts paying you. So it becomes their source of income over a period of time. So these people from the grassroots today, there is in fact one lady from Pune as well in this. These people are now earning, you know, a good 2 to 3 lakhs a month, and it's been a huge transformation for them. And the interesting transformation for me also was that life came a full circle, because just like in the Are You Listening workshop, Martha Stewart had taught people from the grassroots to make films. Here were people who had no filmmaking knowledge, you know, who had never wielded a camera or anything, or learned or gone to film school, or some of them are not even literate. But they've all learned, they've picked up their phones, they've learned how to operate phones, they've learned how to edit, they've learned how to shoot, and they're creating their videos, they've got huge subscribers, you know. So again, this is a promo, which it's actually a series of 8 films, which were a good 10-12 minutes, which profiled each sort of person, but this is a promo for the same series.
Hi friends, नमस्कार, मैं मधुरा.
स्वागत है आपका इंडियन फार्मर में.
Welcome back to my village show.
What up, bro? What's up?
Hello, welcome to my new vlog. Namaste, I'm Sunita from Easy Rongoli.
Ready?
You gonna what?
And start.
जैसे कि मैंने मेरे फादर को खोया है ना, मैं छोटी उम्र से ही लाइक मुझे कमाना है, अपने फॅमिली के लिए कुछ करना है, ये आ गया था दिमाग में.
ही जी जागा दिसते 2 पिलरच्या मध्ये, तिथे मी राहायचे. नो वॉटर टॅप आणि वॉशरूम आणि ऑल दॅट.
गांव देहात में कैसे होता है कि इंजीनियर बनूंगा, डॉक्टर बनूंगा, भले वो कुछ ना करे, अगर कहेगा बंदा कि खेती करना चाहता हूँ तो ट्रस्ट नहीं करेंगे, कहेंगे क्या है क्या पढ़ना है इसमें.
మనం చేసే ప్రతి వీడియోలో మై విలేజ్ వీడియోలో కంప్లీట్ ఒక మెసేజ్ అయితే ఇంటర్నల్ గా ఉంటుంది, బట్ కొంచెం సెటారికల్ వేలో ఒక ఫన్ వేలో చూపిస్తూ ఉంటాం.
ഞാൻ വിശ്വസിക്കുന്നത് കുട്ടികളെ എങ്ങനെ ചിന്തിക്കണം എന്നാണ് പഠിപ്പിക്കേണ്ടത്.
लड़की हो तुम नहीं कर सकते, ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं है.
पैसे की जरूरत नहीं है, एक जज्बे की, जुनून की और कर दिखाने की एक जरूरत होती है.
I wanted like that 100K views in my videos once, and the first one got like 3 million, which got like viral. After that point of time, like it's never about numbers for me. I'm that guy who enjoys the process more than the outcome.
It's just about finding that one thing that you love and keep doing it over and over again.
Okay, so that brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you all very much.